Let's speak in this slide a little more about effects in the human health. The results of scientific research demonstrate that soil pollution directly affects the human health. Which are the risks? The risks to human health arise from contamination from elements such as arsenic, lead, and cadmium. Organic chemicals such as polychlorinated biphenyls, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, as well pharmaceuticals such as antibiotics. According to WHO document, the major threat to human health is being exposed to low dose levels over a lifetime, as the direct short-term effects of such exposure are not obvious. What I want to mean with this? That sometimes we neglect the effect or the impacts that leave some chemicals in our health when they are in the low doses. But the low doses for a very long time then will become a big problem. They will be a threat to human health. Speaking about pesticides, what are the pesticides? What they do? Pesticides are substances or mixture of substances intended to preventing, destroying, or controlling any pest, causing harm or interfering with the production, processing, storage, transport, or marketing of food, agricultural commodities, wood, and wood products. This is the definition given by FAO. They have been intentionally released into the environment at a larger scale since the Second World War, when DDT's insecticidal properties were discovered. So, to clarify, before the Second World War, there were not used chemicals for plant protection or other objectives or purposes. The first time that insecticides were used in agriculture were after we humans discovered the DDT's properties that was able to kill the insects that were damaging the agriculture production. Let's understand this picture that is in this slide. I bring it here to illustrate what we said before, that different systems can communicate between them. They exchange materials, so if one of them is polluted, it will pollute the other environments. For example, let's start from agriculture. When we use in agriculture the pesticides, we use to protect them from pests. But not all the pesticide that we use goes to the pest control. It goes only a very few part. The other part will go to the soil, to the air, and to the plants. From the other side, the plant residues will go for manure or different amendments with solid waste, and a part of them will go to the livestock. When the livestock is consuming these plant products, it will pollute its products that are consumed from humans, but from the other side will pollute the waste that will go again as a fertilizers or as a manure in the soils, which through the irrigation will bring the water to the groundwater and to the surface water, and it will be polluted. The irrigation water, if it is of a poor quality, again is a source of pollution. Over-fertilization, but I would say not only over-fertilization. For sure, over-fertilization even from the livestock, but if we're speaking about chemical fertilizers, then they are polluters because they influence acidity and salinization of the soil. The other pollutant is irrigation with untreated wastewater that comes as waste from different activities from humans and industry and factories. The use of pesticides has helped provide food for an increase in populations similarly to the application of nutrients. What I want to mean with this, that through pesticides, we calculate that protect at least 20% of our production. However, it is documented the overuse of pesticides can have negative effects on human health and the environment. The majority of pesticides are not specifically targeting the pest during the application. During the application, the other organisms, non-target plants and animals are affected. So there are done some estimations and only about 0.1% of pesticides reach the target organism and the remaining applied pesticides do the contamination of the surrounding environment. We all agree that the food is very important for the human health. The quantity and nutritional quality of food supports human health. And the soils are very important in this context because 95% of food production depends on soils. Only 5% of the food comes from other, for example, hydroponics, seafood, alga cultivation. Since the soils are very important, and since we know that the health of the soil is important, then it's true to say that only healthy soils can provide the needed ecosystem services and secure supplies for more food and fiber. But what are ecosystem services? Ecosystem services can be defined as the capacity of natural processes and components to provide goods and services that satisfy human needs, directly or indirectly. Soil pollution reduces food security, both by reducing crop yields due to toxic levels of contaminants, and from the other side, by causing that the produced crops are unsafe for consumption. Agricultural inputs, such as fertilizers, pesticides, antibiotics contained in animal manure, or the ones used for illness prevention and infection treatments in plants, are major potential pollutants in agricultural lands and pose special challenges due to the fast-changing chemical formulas employed. Modern agriculture, in this context, accelerates soil pollution, intensive use of fertilizers and pesticides. When the pollutants reach high levels in the soil, not only do soil degradation processes take place, but crop productivity can also be affected. That is the reason that, in addition to endangering human health, and the environment pollution can also cause economic losses. Excess in soil of the nitrogen, for example, has been identified as the main cause of soil acidification and salinization. This happens through the process of nitrification and other nitrogen transformation processes. Soil acidity, for example, is increased very slowly under natural conditions for hundreds to millions of years. But this process of acidification of the soils is significantly accelerated by agricultural practices, mainly from the use of excessive nitrogen fertilization, which causes from its side a reduction in soil pH about 0.25 pH units in average. It is proven that pesticides cause health problems directly in humans. Especially the farmers are very risked group of people. Workers in producing companies, transporters of pesticides, storage, as we saw in the previous picture that I show you. And then through the food, it goes to the consumers. Problems from acute poisonings, in case of accidents, for example, to diseases such as Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease. Several types of cancer, for example, breast cancer, leukemia, lymphoma, asthma, autism, and learning disabilities, diabetes, birth defects, reproductive dysfunction, chronic pulmonary disease, cardiovascular diseases, increased mortality rate in children under 5 years, etc. There is an impact of use of different chemicals. Intensive and industrial agriculture decreased biodiversity through monoculture. It decreases plant biodiversity, soil microorganism biodiversity is influenced, animals biodiversity, and then we go to the landscape biodiversity. Even the landscape is affected, and it has even aesthetical effect to us. Now let's look at this table. I'm trying to summarize in this table the degree of environmental diffusion of chemicals used in agriculture. This is expressed in percentage of total applied. What does it mean? That from the quantity of product, a pesticide or a fertilizer, one part of them stays in loco and the other part moves to the other environments or systems. I'm leaving some seconds you to consult this table, and then I will try to summarize and to draw the conclusions based on the data in this table. So, let's take in consideration, for example, the pesticides. From the table, we see that the majority of the pesticides go to the atmosphere and to the place where it is used in the loco. And then we have it or the pesticides in other environments. For example, one part of them is absorbed from the plants, another part goes with the soil through the erosion in other environments, for example, in the surface water, in the lakes, in the rivers, in the sea then. And one part of it go to the underground water. Compare it, for example, to micro elements that go in the soil through the fertilization, chemical fertilization. We see that in case, for example, of phosphorus, 55% to 75% of it remains in the soil, remains in the local. Why? Because the phosphates, in fact, most of the time are not soluble. As soon as the phosphate fertilizers arrive in the soil, they be in contact or become in contact with soil solution, and because of the pH of the soil solution, these are transferred from the soluble form to non-soluble form, and this means that will be spread less compared to the nitrogen. In fact, the nitrogen is can move more, is soluble, and from the fertilizers, from the micro element, is the one that moves more and is the one that goes more to the water and to groundwater and to surface water, and can pollute further much more the environment and can create the problems of eutrophication as we spoke before. Have a look, please have a look in this table. This table again has the function to summarize different studies about the impacts in the soil of the human activity. So, water erosion is a bad effect that agriculture, for example, activity cause to the soil. Water erosion, it is happening because of deforestation, for example, or overgrazing, and mismanagement of the soil during the cultivation, during the agricultural activities. Wind erosion is affected mainly because of overgrazing of the land or of the meadows. Chemical degradation, so these are different spots, different areas affected from the chemical degradation. And in this case, we have depletion of organic matter, loss of nutrients, salinization of the soil, and acidification of the soil. The physical degradation, there are, for example, compaction, crusting, and waterlogging. Here you have the total area affected. These data are referring to 1997. Now, in this time, these effects are bigger, are higher. Let's jump to the next slide. And now we are going to the end of this part. I wanted just to summarize here that as we saw previously in the previous slides, pesticides and chemical fertilizers cause soil degradation, which is the example, for example, salinization and acidification of the soil causes because of the use of the nitrogen. The pesticides and chemical fertilizer cause water pollution and eutrophication. And when I spoke about eutrophication, I explained to you what it does mean. Pesticides are present in the food chain because they move from soil and water to the organisms that live there, to the plants that we will use, and then to the humans. because of these pollutants present in the food or from the pollutants that we take from the air or the water, we can have diseases because they induce disease and pest resistance. And what is pest resistance? You will see in other lectures, but just to explain that when you use pesticides, the organisms, the insects or the diseases create time by time because some of them are stronger against the pesticides and they will be multiplicated. So when we'll use the pesticide the next time, the pesticides will not do the effect. So we have to use much more pesticides or we have to discover another and so on. So this is a long process. So till the next time, till the next part of the lecture, I wish you again have a good time and good study. See you.